Afternoon settles on the deck like a lazy cat and bothered. Sun warmed, and slightly in the way. You squint against the brightness. The sails billow like the lungs of some ancient, wheezing beast. Seagulls swirl above, circling in that charmingly vulture-like way. They know something's cooking. Literally, down near the galley, you hear the clang of tin against iron. Lunch, salt pork, hardtack, and if luck holds a splash of citrus peel to keep your teeth from resigning. But just as you reach for your portion, the cook pulls something unexpected from his apron. A delicate paper-wrapped bundle. Tea leaves. Again. This time, he's not brewing. He's rubbing them gently over a small cloth bag that smells like dried fruit and sweat. It's not snack preparation. Laundry, obscure tidbit. Pirates sometimes used leftover tea leaves as deodorizers. Not for freshness juiced. You watch as he hands the bag to a lanky redhead named Felix, who promptly shoves it into the sleeve of his coat like it's contraband. On this ship, hygiene is a limited resource luxury. You find a shady patch by the forecastle and chew your salted meat thoughtfully. The sun prickles your scalp. A breeze rattles the lines. Somewhere, a rope creaks with the rhythmic persistence of a bad knee. "You know," murmurs a voice beside you. The Chinese say tea helps with digestion. You turn to find Gideon, the navigator, looking smug. He's always quoting things no one asked for. "The Chinese also say dragons bring luck," you reply. Gideon shrugs. "Maybe that's why we haven't sunk yet." Historical fact. Pirates in the 18th century were unusually multicultural. Ships often held escaped slaves, disgraced nobles, ex-soldiers, and sailors from China, India, West Africa, and beyond each, bringing their own customs, superstitions. The sails snap. The ship groans as it shifts course, just a hair to the northeast. You follow Gideon to the map table, where tea stains mark the Caribbean like ancient ink blots. Port Royal lies somewhere to the west, Tortuga to the north. But the ship's not headed to either. Not yet. The captain wants something else. A small inlet whispered about in night watches and half-dreamed rumors. You know better than to ask. The sun dips lower, throwing the water into liquid gold. You feel sleepy, but not just from the heat. The steady rocking, the smell of leaves and salt and boiled meat. The hum of shipboard ritual lit. All conspires to lull you into forgetting. You a criminal on a floating death box. Historians still debate whether pirates lived longer lives thanks to their teak, water, or simply had fewer chances to die in cities from diseases. Either way, you feel suspiciously alive right now. You close your eyes, just enough to hear the world dim slightly. You don't notice the shadow passing under the ship. Not yet. Evening doesn't fall, it seeps, It crawls down the mast lines, sneaks into barrels, and nestles in the folds of your damp shirt. Voices lower to murmurs. Even the sea seems to hush itself, as if it's waiting for something. You lie back on a coil of rope that smells like it's seen better centuries. The stars begin to pop out, hesitant and flickering. Someone hums a tune too old to name. And just as your eyes begin to flutter a splash, loud, close, you're up on your feet without thinking. So is everyone else. Lanterns swing. Knives come out. The water is rippling beside the hull. Then you see it. A barrel. Floating. Intact. The captain curses under his breath. He motions for it to be brought aboard. 2 sailors lean over with gaff hooks and drag it in. It's heavy. Sealed. No markings. Suspicious, but inside once pried open with a crowbar and a cursor loose tea leaves. Still dry. Historical fact. During the height of colonial smuggling, merchants and privateers often tossed valuable contraband like tea or silk overboard during naval chases, only to retrieve it later using coded maps and marked buoys. Some pirates learned to follow these trails like sharks on the scent. You run your fingers through the leaves. They're fragrant, bergamot, orange. Something floral and aristocratic. Too clean for pirates. The captain orders it stowed below, wrapped in oilskin and logged. That last part is mostly ceremonial. No one actually keeps real logs. Except Gideon. But he also eats paper when he's drunk. So, as the crew relaxes, the strange tension lingers. Where there's a floating barrel, there's usually something or someone missing it. You scan the horizon. Obscure tidbit. Obscure tidbit, or worse British tax agents. You chuckle at the thought, then stop yourself. What if it's true? Your cup clinks as someone hands you a fresh brew. It smells like the barrel elegant, foreign, and completely out of place aboard this battered sea wolf of a ship. You sip anyway. Because what else is there? Historians still debate whether pirates had access to luxury teas or just scavenged from what they stole. Some even suggest high-ranking crew developed genuine tastes. You take another sip. It tastes like danger, but also just a little. Like home. Night wraps the ship like a thick wool blanket that smells faintly of damp wood, tobacco. The stars above are mercifully clear, tonight spilled across the sky like powdered sugar flung from some celestial baker-s, hand casting their pale shimmer across the slow heaving waves below. You lean on the rail, cup still in hand, the last dregs of that bergamot-sweetened tea cooling against your skin, back and forth, as though cradling you into something deeper than sleep. The crew is quieter now, not silent. Just soft, their voices low like the hush that comes after a funeral or before a storm, when everyone seems to understand something unspoken and chooses not to poke at it. There is a kind of sacred rhythm here. Day's heat gives way to night's breath, and the rituals unfolding hammocks, dousing lamps. Checking nuts happen without command, like the ship has trained the men better than any captain could. The deck creaks under you, and you imagine the wood murmuring old secrets. Like a grandmother half talking to herself while stirring soup. The kind of tales that never get written down because they're far too real. Just then, Gideon appears again, barefoot and blinking like an owl, holding a battered tin filled with what else this time steeped in salt water for the gut, as if your gut hasn't seen enough horror. Historical fact: some pirate crews, especially those from West Africa or the Indian Ocean, brought with them traditions of herbal medicine and siru teas that were believed to fight parasites, seasickness, and even melancholia, though the only guaranteed effect was a bitter taste. You accept the cup without complaint because refusal is impolite, even when it smells like boiled barnacles and regret. You sip slowly, pretending to enjoy it. Because that's what you do in a floating society of mostly madmen. You pretend, until the pretending becomes the thing itself. Far off, a splash breaks the lull, far to sea. Too close to ignorant, everyone briefly freezes, the way people do when they hear a floorboard creak in an empty house. The captain, who never really sleeps, rises from the shadows like a character out of an old folk tale, one that ends badly, and peers into the black horizon with the look of someone who has seen too much and hasn't figured out how to forget any of it. Driftwood, someone mutters, but no one quite believes it, because driftwood doesn't move like that. Still, no alarms, no orders, no cannons, just a shift in posture. Historians still debate whether pirate captains truly trusted omens, or whether they simply played along because fear, after all, was the cheapest kind of control. Eventually, a pipe is lit. A song half soon. Someone farts dramatically and gets slapped with a rag. Life resumes. You finish your tea, salt and all. It's disgusting, but you feel fine. Like maybe the sea's going to let you live another night. Dawn doesn't burst over the Osheret sighs. Its way in, slow and sticky. The clouds stretch thin above you, pink and gray like old parchment soaked in rosewater. And the ship begins to wake up again, groaning through its joints and joints of its groaning crew. You rub your eyes, stiff from too little sleep and too many dreams that smelled suspiciously like oversteeped tea and fear. This morning, something's different. The cook is already boiling water, but the fire is too hot, the steam too sharp, and the usual clatter of cups has a kind of tension behind it. As though the ritual's been sped up, as if you're all preparing for a guest, no one invited. The captain stands at the helm in full coat, not just the breezy cotton wrap he wears when he but the long wool one with brass buttons that catch the light like tiny coins of war. That's when you see it. A flag on the horizon. Black but not just any black. This one's new, crisp, and stitched upon it, in white thread, is not the usual scullbutt, with steam curling like a snake above it. You blink, but it's still there. The crew starts whispering. One name comes up more than once. Eliza Bitterleaf. Historical fact. There was, in fact, a short-lived pirate, known in merchant circles as Lady Bitterleaf, who commanded a small but unnervingly precise vessel that only attacked ships carrying tea. Cargo never gold, never weapons, just tea, and whose crew were rumored to brew their spoils before setting the victims adrift with hot mugs and polite notes of apology. Gideon's face turns 3 shades paler, which is impressive considering he's already the color of old chalk. She don't kill unless she has to, he says, eyes wide, but she always takes the leaves. You ask, perhaps foolishly, what happens if there are no leaves? He doesn't answer. Instead, he pulls out a small pouch from his sleeve, filled with jasmine pearls, and clutches it like a priest holding a relic. You consider doing the same. The captain lowers his spyglass and sighs like a man remembering an old lover who stole his maps and set his pants on fire. Brace for contact, he says quietly. No panic. Just preparation. Obscure tidbit. Bitterleaf's crew was said to wear scarves scented with Earl Grey to confuse the noses of enemy dogs. Those may be apocryphal, or simply the fever dream of a very tired quartermaster with a love of Historians still debate whether Bitterleaf was real, a myth, or a carefully crafted tale used by tea smugglers to excuse their missing stock and unpaid invoices. But today, myth or not, she's closing in, and all you have is one last cup. The kettle whistles softly, just a gentle exhale this time, like it too is trying not to disturb the fragile calm left behind by Bitterleaf. Watching the cook measure out what's left of the good leaves with the kind of solemnity usually reserved for funerals or lost wagers. There's something sacred about this part of the day now, something that lingers longer than it should, like incense smoke after a ceremony. Willing to admit was real because what happened earlier wasn't tea. On this ship quite knows what to do with reverence. Gideon mutters that he still thinks the porcelain widow runs on ghostwind and blackmail. But he's sipping his tea like it's holy water. And you don't point out the contradiction, because frankly, you're doing the same. The captain has disappeared below deck, ostensibly to study maps, though everyone knows he est just pacing back and forth and swearing quietly into his sleeve while trying to forget the look of that porcelain cup in your hands. Above, the sky is too blue, too untroubled, as though the sea is trying to gaslight you into believing none of it happened. That Bitterleaf is just a sailor-esque myth, and you've all been sniffing too many citrus peels. Sharper, more meaningful, historical fact. In some rare cases, captured pirates claim to have been spared in exchange for hosting ceremonial tea gatherings on deck. a practice likely borrowed from Chinese or Japanese naval customs, but twisted through the lens of desperate improvisation and maritime diplomacy. The ship resumes its gentle arc westward, sails full and fat, like the belly of a satisfied cat. Fine, but in the way that freshly cleaned wounds look fine right before they split open again. Below deck, murmurs rise. Some want to pursue the widow and offer more leaves in hopes of protection. Others say it's madness that you never chase a storm after it's passed. You sit near a barrel and listen, not speaking. The wood at your back warm from the sun, which now serves as a popular gathering point for ants and regret. Obscure tidbit. Some pirates believe tea could be used to divine the future, pouring the dregs into the sea and watching the way it swirled before sinking, a kind of nautical tasseography, born from equal parts boredom and terror. Gideon offers to read your tea swirl, and then promptly claims you either going to marry a goat or fall into a treasure chest. You notice he refuses to read his own. Historians still debate whether these tea divinations were genuine beliefs or just clever ways for bored sailors to mock each other without outright mutiny. Either way, tonight nobody pours their cup overboard. Instead, you all drink slowly, quietly, and when someone starts to sing a sea shanty about tea merchants hiding gold in double-bottomed chests, nobody laughs. Because maybe, just maybe, some stories are meant to be taken seriously. Even the ridiculous one. By the time night creeps back across the deck like spilled ink from a broken journal, the sea has settled into a rhythm so hypnotic it might as well be a lullaby scored by some. When she's quiet, the stars emerge one by one, not in a hurry, but in a deliberate procession, as if waiting for your crew to get quiet enough to deserve them. And one by one men drift to their hammocks, ropes creak in gentle protest, and the air thickens with a sleepy sort of peace. Not even because of the tea, but because something about today refuses to settle down inside your chest like a spoon rattling against the inside of an empty cup, long after the drink is gone. You walk slowly barefoot along the deck, the boards rough but familiar beneath your soles, and you trail your fingers along the edge of the gunwale like you're checking to see if the ship is still real, still solid, still yours. From the shadows near the bow, a voice calls out, not loud, not startled, just patient. Still thinking about her, aren't you? You don't need to ask who her is. Gideon steps into view, carrying 2 cups and looking like he hasn't blinked since sun. You ever think? He says, sipping and squinting at the stars like they might rearrange themselves just to spite him. Maybe the reason Bitterleaf only takes tea is because it's the one thing that still feels like home out here. You want to scoff, but instead, you drink. Because it tastes like something soft and far away. Historical fact. Pirates, when docked, often visited tea houses because they preferred calm conversation over chaos, but because tea houses were often neutral ground. And a good pot of oolong could smooth over even the sharpest business dispute. The wind shifts, soft and wet with a hint of coming rain, and the sky flickers with distant lightning that never seems to reach the water. You and Gideon sit in silence for a while. Not quite friends. Not quite enemies, just two men tied to the same floating question mark. Sipping quietly and pretending that peace is something you can swallow if you steep it long enough. Obscure tidbit. On at least one recorded pirate ship, it was tradition to throw the first teacup of a voyage into the sea, not as an offering, but as a dare to the ocean, a way of saying, we're civilized. Historians still debate whether that tradition started as bravado, or simply someone being clumsy and making a myth out of a mess. You hold it a little tighter. And as you watch the night deepen and the waves roll on, you realize something that chills you more than any breeze. The porcelain widow is still out there, sailing silently, somewhere beyond the stars. And next time, she might want more than leaves. You're floating. Not on the sea yet, but in that slow, syrupy hour. Just after dusk, the sun has taken its leave with a shrug, and the sky, like some tired tavern drape, slips into a purplish bruise. You're on the edge of nowhere, somewhere in the Caribbean, 1723. To be exact though, you won't find a calendar that agrees. A breeze stirs the coarse linen of your shirt. It smells of salt, tar, and old lemons. Somewhere, a bell chimes, with the lazy rhythm of a ship, not quite anchored to reality. Not yet. You're what's generously called a common hand, which is 18th century speak. We haul ropes, swab decks. But don't worry, you probably won't make it through this day anyway, at least not awake. Before we go further, if you're enjoying this slow drift into the past, feel free to like and subscribe. It helps this sleepy little voyage stay afloat. And if you're awake enough to type, drop a comment with your location and local time. We'll raise a mug of tea. Not rum in your honor. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You rise at dawn, but on a pirate ship, dawn is more of a concept than a clock. The quartermaster half bureaucrat, half executioner grunts, something unintelligible, and the crew stirs to life like a half-dead orchestra tuning its lungs. You expect shouting. You expect rum. What you don't expect is a small copper kettle clanking near the cook fire. One of the older mates is spooning out dried leaves into muslin sacks with all the reverence of a priest preparing communion. Tea. Real tea. Smuggled, precious, absurdly fragile Chinese tea, in fact. You shuffle closer, trying not to look interested. Pirates aren't exactly known for subtlety, but there's an unspoken etiquette around this particular ritual. The first brew of the day goes to the captain, then the quartermaster, then the cook, yes. Then, if there's any left, the rest of you might be granted a lukewarm, metallic sip. You hold the tin cup in your hands like it's gold. Now, here's the kicker. Despite the stories, Pirates in the 1700s weren't guzzling rum like frat boys on shore leave. Rum was currency. It was barter, and it was dangerous. Tea, though it was stability. Warmth. Cleanish water boiled into submission. Historical fact. By the early 18th century, it traveled in locked chests aboard East India ships and was often stolen en masse by pirate crews who knew its resale value in colonial ports. Leisure. You sip. The taste is faintly bitter, with hints of mildew and revolution. The ship creaks beneath your feet. A man sneezes behind you and gets scowled at, like he's insulted the queen. Obscure tidbit. Some pirate ships stored their tea leaves in gunpowder tins to keep them dry. No one speaks. Not until the first sip is swallowed. It's not superstition, exactly. It's survival. Now, historians still debate whether tea truly replaced rum or merely complemented it. But aboard this ship, at least this morning, it's clear. Tea rules the deck. The sails snap above you, and the sky rolls into a deeper indigo. You wipe the rim of your cup and hand it down to the next sailor in line. The ocean, meanwhile, doesn't care what you drink. It's about to remind you of that. There's a saying among seafarers, and it goes something like this. If the sea wants something from you, usually socks, sometimes whole limbs. This morning, it takes your peace, jolts to life, like someone kicked a sleeping dog. The captain emerges in a coat that hasn't seen a needle in years. He squints toward the east, then mutters something that sounds a lot like well. You secure a line and pretend you know what you're doing. Historical fact. In the early 1700s, pirates didn't always attack merchant ships. Learning the cruise patterns, watching their defenses, and occasionally sending coded signals to gauge who might be open to bribery. Yes, there were pirate HR departments. The ship you're watching now is too clean, too fat with goods, too slow to run. Perfect prey. You remember the kettle from earlier? The careful way it was poured? The way even the toughest men? It's not just about warmth. It's about control. About reminding yourself that you're human, even when the world is trying to turn you into something else. You squint at the horizon. The other ship isn't turning. Not away. Not toward. Just drifting. Like a drunk thinking too hard about his next step. Your crew readies the cannons but quietly. This isn't the movies. There are no fiery speeches, no dramatic music. Just the sounds of boots, metal, and one guy coughing into his elbow with suspicious timing. As the wind shifts, you catch a strange scent flowers. Soap. That's not pirate smell. That's civilized. Obscure tidbit. Some pirate crews used herbal infusions, like jasmine, in their tea, not for taste but to mask the smell of mildew and death. on long voyages. Half the Caribbean started to smell like a haunted apothecary. The ship grows closer. You can almost see faces. And then the sails adjust, the hull groans, and the ship begins to slowly drift away. Or worse, a Navy trap. Smart bastards, the captain grumbles. He waves off the pursuit, but not before letting one cannon fire into the open sea. A polite warning, like knocking on a door you don't want opened. Back to calm. The cook, ever a realist, starts the kettle again. The moment has passed, but something lingers. Not danger, exactly just a whisper of it. You sit near the edge of the deck, legs dangling over the side. The sea below is mottled blue and green, like bruised glass. Your cup is warm again. Not rum. Not rum. Someone mutters beside you. You nod. Historians still debate whether pirates drank tea for survival, trade leverage, or simply to feel a bit more like the world was in tea. Eating them alive one storm at a time. Nothing explodes. Yet. Now, the sky is brightening, and somewhere below, in the shadows of the cargo hold, the real treasure crates of stolen tea, wrapped in oilskin weight, to be counted. Either way, the kettle will whistle again tomorrow. The morning arrives not with fanfare, but with reluctance, dragging a low fog across the deck. Tea actually invited, but has made themselves at home anyway, and you wake to the dull clank of metal, the occasional bark of orders, and the slow realization that your mouth tastes faintly. You sit up slowly, spine cracking like old timber, and the hammock beneath you groans in agreement, slightly more untrustworthy than they were yesterday, which is saying something considering your entire bed is a swinging net strung above cargo. That may or may not include stolen barrels of sugar-free rats with names and one sailor, who claims he's hiding from a ghost that smells like cloves. Up on deck, the light is soft, washed out, the kind of pale sun that doesn't bother to warm you, but still makes you squint. And somewhere above the mainmast, a gull circles lazily, clearly judging everyone aboard, and particularly you, who forgot to brush the crumbs from your lap. The cook, bleary-eyed and wearing yesterday, apron which somehow always looks like it fought a duel with a chicken and lost these preparing a blend he calls Stormleaf. Though you suspected, mostly boiled rainwater and dried citrus peels stolen from the Captain stores, you sip it anyway. You always do. Historical fact. On long voyages, pirates often created their own makeshift teas using local leaves, dried citrus rinds, and even the shavings of bark or root they believed prevented scurvy, which may have worked marginally better than doing nothing, but far worse than actual limes. Gideon joins you, dragging a stool with the stubborn defiance of a man who has not convinced the deck beneath him will stay still today. Dreamt of her, he says flatly, staring out at the sea. She was sitting in a chair made of coral, sipping from a mug with my name on it and laughing. You nod because that sounds about right. The porcelain widow may be gone, but she has settled into your minds like steam in the joints of this old ship clinging, invisible but insistent. You glance toward the east, toward nothing in particular, and sip your tea a little slower. The captain emerges from below, looking like he hasn't slept in a week, and still wearing the coat he donned the day before, as if peeling it off might let yesterday's ghosts crawl too close. We change course, he announces, unceremoniously. Lesser trade routes, and nobody asks why. Because everyone already knows. You don't sail toward Bitterleaf. You drift away from her. Obscure tidbit. Among some crews, it was considered bad luck to drink tea. Morning sails something about the rising sun and boiled leaves canceling each other out hand, though no one ever explained the logic. Many sailors followed it with unnerving seriousness. Historians still debate whether this superstition came from East Indian sailing customs or was invented by a very bored helmsman who hated early shifts and needed a reason to postpone breakfast. Regardless, no one drinks their tea until the sails are set. The heading is locked, and the porcelain widow is mercifully. The afternoon brings with it a quiet too deep to trust. Like a lull in conversation at a dinner table where no one knows who paid the bill or what the bill even. A little louder than usual, a little more personal. You sit by the rail again, where the ocean stretches endlessly into the sort of blue that feels too calm, like it's covering something up. And you wonder not, for the first time, how many ships lie beneath. Their holes full of undelivered letters, unsipped tea, and the ghosts of sailors who didn't listen to their gut. The crew is unusually subdued. The dice games have gone quiet. Even Gideon, who once tried to trade a spoonful of sugar for someone's hammock space, seems preoccupied, gently turning a tin of dried leaves in his hands, as though looking for a message written in dust. The captain has ordered a half-day of silence, no music, no hammering, no shouting over rope's end. That silence settles in your ears, like cotton soaked in brine. You pass the time slowly as pirates tend to. You mend a sock with fishing line. That's seen more salt than sun. And you sip from a mug that no longer carries flavor, just the memory of bergamot and burned bark. Historical fact. Tea leaves were sometimes used by sailors to dye cloth, particularly when ship colors faded and uniforms or flags needed freshening without the cost of proper pigment. This created garments in hues of tan, brown, or a greenish gray, depending on the leaves used. From the corner of your eye, you spot a bird, not a gull this time. A tern, and it's flying toward you, fast. Which can only mean one of two things. Either land is near, or a storm is coming from behind. The captain squints toward the southeast. His brow creased in that particular shape that suggests he's calculating not just weather, But karma. He doesn't say anything. He just walks back below deck and shuts the door softly behind him. Obscure tidbit. Some captains believed that closing a cabin door silently before a storm would prevent the wind from taking it as a challenge. Loud doors were said to invite loud weather. Historians still debate whether this belief originated with British privateers or drunken Dutch navigators. But ship logs do reveal that the quietest captains often survived the worst storms. You tuck that thought away. You dream again, not of women with shifting faces or porcelain, ships whispering through fog, but of a kitchen, small stone-walled, with low shelves and pots that clink together when someone laughs. There is tea on the table, bread, and the air smells like safety. You wake with that smell still in your nose. It fades slowly as scents from dreams tend to do, replaced by the real-world aroma of steeping something jasmine, thyme, and the crackle of the ship easing into motion again. You step onto the deck and are met with nods, not greetings, just acknowledgement, as though you've become something else now, something they understand. The captain offers you a mug. It's warm. The tea is a blend you don't recognize, but it feels right, soft, earthy, with something floral hiding at the edges. Gideon joins you. He doesn't speak. He just raises his mug in salute and sips slowly, eyes half-lidded against the rising sun. Historical fact, after particularly strange encounters at sea, captains often required silence for a full day afterward, not as punishment, but as space. Time for minds to settle, for meanings to unfold. One log refers to this as the unwinding. That's what today is. Unwinding, the sails are steady, the waves small, and everything has that strange, golden stillness of a Sunday morning on land. You walk the deck slowly, touching the rail, noticing things, the repaired patch in the sail that wasn't there before, a rope coiled in the shape of a spiral U. Don't remember tying. The cook hums a new tune, and someone, somewhere, begins steeping a blend that smells faintly of rosemary and smoke. Obscure tidbit. Rosemary tea was once brewed on pirate ships, not for health, but for memory. It was said to keep the mind clear after encounters with odd tides and ghost wind. Crews would drink it and then write down their dreams. Historians still debate whether these were early experiments in dream analysis or simply desperate attempts to explain the unexplainable. You sip, you write nothing, you simply watch the sea, and for the first time in a long while, you feel like it's watching you back. Kindly. There is a wordless rhythm to life aboard now, not laziness, no. The ropes still need coiling, the decks still need scrubbing, the sails still must be convinced to do what they're told, but everything moves with a quiet coordination that feels almost practiced, as though the ship itself has settled into a deeper kind of knowing. You notice it first in the way the tea is passed. No more grumbling, no more arguments about blends or water temperature. Each brew is chosen like a song based on mood. Whether memory, and somehow, the right leaves always appear. Even Gideon, usually a storm in a human shape, now moves like a man who has danced this same dance 1,000 lifetimes before. He offers you a cup mid-watch. It's nettle and mint today, he says. Good for whatever aches you're ignoring. You smile and take it. And it does help, maybe. Not the soreness in your shoulders, but the ache behind your ribs. The one you forgot was even there. Historical fact: nettle tea was used widely aboard ships in the 1700s, not only for its supposed medicinal benefits, but because it grew easily near ports and didn't spoil during long voyages. Crews believed it could pull salt from the blood. The sea is generous today, not in riches or fish or sightings of land, but in patience. The waves roll slow and long, like lullabies written by someone who never raised their voice. A school of silver fish follows in the wake. A single albatross rides the wind high above. Nothing remarkable, and yet everything is. The captain reads aloud from a book he never opens in storm. Whether poems, soft ones, about gardens, someone, probably the Kukads, a sprig of lavender to the kettle without asking. The scent spreads like memory does, invisibly, and all at once. Obscure tidbit: lavender was rarely used aboard ships due to its fragility, but when available, it was brewed at dusk. Sailors claimed it slowed the ship's dreaming, whatever that meant. One log simply reads, "Sailed softer." Everyone woke up humming. Historians still debate if these were hallucinations, metaphors, or simple happiness. You sip, the sea hums, and the silence is no longer empty. It is full and warm, like a kettle just beginning to sing. By nightfall, the sky has pulled on its darker coat, deep navy, with stars stitched so carefully into its seams that you feel guilty for staring too long. You lie on the deck, cup resting on your chest, watching constellations wobble gently with the sway of the ship. Gideon lies beside you, not speaking, not needing to. You both know something is ending, or beginning, or maybe both. You've lost track of how long it's been since the porcelain widow last showed herself, but you still feel her, not in a haunted way. In the way you remember a song once it's no longer playing. The sails whisper above you, and below deck, the kettle hums, even when no one is boiling it. It's been doing that for days now. No one mentions it. You all just accept it. The way you accept that tea can warm your fingers, even after it's gone cold. Historical fact: in some pirate crews, the ship itself was seen as a living member of the company, deserving of offerings, protection, and yes, even a proper bedtime. Some captains were known to whisper goodnight to the figurehead before turning in. Tonight, someone lights a lantern at the bow. No wind, no need, just a soft glow to keep the dark company. You sip your tea slowly. It tastes like something old. Maybe clove. Maybe plum. Maybe thyme. The captain walks past barefoot, coat draped over one shoulder. He pauses by your side, kneels, and places something beside you. It's a map, drawn by hand, not of coasts or islands, but of stars. Tomorrow, he says, we follow this. You nod, because of course you do. Obscure tidbit: some ships charted tea routes, not just by sea, but by taste marking where certain leaves were found. Which brews brought good fortune, which ports brewed like poetry, and which brewed like punishment. These maps were rarely shared, and often burned. Historians still debate whether these were real maps, or metaphors for personal change. But tonight, yours is real, folded gently, marked in ink and memory. The stars above blink slowly, the sea sighs, and somewhere deep inside the hull, The kettle gives one last, the first drops of rain arrive not as a downpour, going completely but quiet, as gentle taps on the brim of your hat if you're lucky enough to have one, or on the knuckles of your fingers where they grip the railing, each drop spaced just far enough apart to convince you it might stop before it truly begins. But you know better. This is not a storm that barges in. This is one that approaches. Polite and slow, like a gentleman caller with muddy boots and very sharp teeth, pausing just long enough at the door to make you think you have time to clean up. The wind shifts again. Not angry but insistent, carrying with it a scent that's hard to name: wet rope, iron nails, tea-soaked wood, and the kind of electricity you can't see, only feel in the spaces between your bones. The sails ripple uneasily, like they're muttering among themselves, and the crew begins their quiet flurry of motion, reefing, tying, tightening every hand, moving with that instinctive rhythm that doesn't come from training, but from the deep, primal knowledge that the ocean does not care how well you practiced. Gideon appears beside you, eyes squinting into the horizon, and says, "It'll be the kind that doesn't shout, just presses on your chest until your ribs ask politely to leave." You nod, because he's usually right about storms, and because you're not sure your voice would sound like yours right now. Historical fact: in the 18th century, pirates were often better prepared for storms than Navy ships, not because of better engineering but because of looser hierarchies. Crews acted faster when not waiting for 10 layers of command to tell them what their gut already knew. Below deck, anything that can be tied down: ice chests, hammocks, barrels, and in one case, a man named Stubby who tied himself to a post just in case sleep took him before the sea did. The cook secures the kettle with 3 ropes and a prayer, muttering that tea brewed during a storm carries weather in the flavor, which you choose not to ask about. You help where you can, hands raw against wet canvas, boots sliding on slick boards, heart drumming to a rhythm that doesn't quite match the pace of the ship. Like an offbeat in a song you can't stop humming. Obscure tidbit: some pirates believed that if you brewed tea during a storm and drank it after, the sea would remember your bravery and offer calmer waves next time. A superstition followed by at least one notorious crew who kept a teapot nailed to the mast for emergencies. Historians still debate whether this ritual helped morale or just provided something warm to hold onto while vomiting into the wind. The sky darkens in shades. Not one single sweep, but layers upon layers, clouds like bruises stacked on bruises until the line between sea and sky vanishes entirely, and all you're left with is motion and wind, and the constant ache in your knees that says don't fall. You hold tight and wait for whatever comes next. Asterisk: when the rain finally arrives in earnest, it comes sideways, lashing like an insult that's both accurate and personal, soaking through every layer of cloth, skin, and certainty, until the only dry thing left aboard is the captain's pride, and even that seems slightly damp. The ship groans beneath the strain, not a fearful sound, but one of resignation, like an old dog rolling over to let the thunder pass on. To the masts creak in reply, swaying just enough to make you wonder how much wood can bend before it remembers how to snap. You cling to the ropes, slick with salt and rain and sweat, feeling your weight become irrelevant. Like the sea could flick you off this vessel like a breadcrumb from a plate, and you wouldn't even make a sound on the way down. And still, somehow, amid the chaos and Spray, someone manages to put the kettle on. Of course they do, because pirates, for all their lawlessness and ragged charm, are creatures of routine. And if they're going to be dashed against the rocks or swallowed by Neptune's gaping jaw, they'd rather go with warm hands and a sip of something familiar. The tea against all logic steeps, and it's passed. Hand to hand, cup to trembling cup, because ceremony matters when nothing else does, and you find yourself sipping something vaguely cinnamon-flavored while waves taller than sin crash against the hull like nature's very loud, very wet way of saying, I see you. Historical fact. There are logs from privateers and pirates alike describing the act of sharing tea during storms as both a morale tactic and a superstition. In one account, a quartermaster noted that holding a hot mug gave a man more reason not to fly off the deck than holding a rope did. Beside you, Gideon is laughing quietly, grimly, the kind of laugh people have when they've already decided that dying now would be inconvenient. The crew doesn't scream. They sing, a low, wordless chant that seems to vibrate up from the wood. Itself, older than language, older than flags. The sound of men and women and fools daring to hum while the ocean tries to erase them. And as you cling to the deck, tea sloshing dangerously near the rim of your mug, you realize something strange. You're not afraid. Not exactly, because fear implies uncertainty. But this is clarity. You're either going to survive this storm, or you're not. And either way, your tea's still warm. Obscure tidbit. Some ships kept a single unlit lantern in the hold during storms. Not for light, but to hold the dark in place. Sailors said it gave the shadows something to gather around, so they wouldn't wander through the rest of the ship. Historians still debate whether the ritual had roots in Norse maritime practices, or whether it was simply what happens when people are very tired and very wet for very long. The wind howls like it knows your name. The sea churns. The sails shudder, and you take another sip, because after all this is the life you chose. And storms, like tea, are best faced hot asterisk when morning comes. It doesn't arrive in any normal sense. There's no golden dawn slicing through storm clouds, no choir of gulls returning to perch with triumphant cries, no sudden heat of sunlight drying your sleeves. It just appears quietly, subtly, as if the night got tired of yelling and simply slipped out the back without saying goodbye. You open your eyes, not even sure you'd closed them, and you're still clinging to the rigging, one boot caught under a line. Your teacup tipped sideways on the deck, empty but miraculously unbroken. Like some small deity decided this one's earned a little mercy. The sea has calmed, but not in a joyful, celebratory wit. Has that hollow, stunned stillness of someone who's just shouted themselves hoarse and is now sitting quietly, trying to remember why they were angry in the first place. Your ship, bless it, still floats. A few sails are torn. The ropes hang at odd angles, and there's at least one man asleep in a barrel. But the hull holds, the mast stands, and most miraculously of all, the kettle survived. You crawl toward it like a pilgrim crawling toward a shrine. Gideon's already there, hair plastered to his face like seaweed and grinning. Like someone who bet on the apocalypse and won. Made a blend with dried orange and desperation, he says, handing you a cup. Bit smoky. You drink without hesitation. It tastes like ash, hope, and something that might be cumin. Historical fact. Many pirate ships reused the same tea leaves multiple times, boiling them again, and again, until they resembled broth more than tea, adding spices, fish bones, or rum to disguise the taste. Ship stew, some called it half drink, half survival. The rest of the crew begins to stir, crawling from bunks and barrels and makeshift shelters, blinking up at the pale, washed-out sky like cats dragged out of a dream they didn't ask. Or some mutter prayers, others just curse. One begins singing softly, about cinnamon bark and mermaids with teacups for eyes. Nobody stops him. The captain emerges last. He surveys the ship, nods once, and walks the deck silently, placing a hand on every mast beam and rail as if saying thank you in the only language Wood understands. He pauses at your cup, squints, and says, "Did we lose anyone?" Gideon points at the barrel. There's a grunt from inside. "Nope." The captain nods again and says, "Then we press on." Obscure tidbit. It's recorded that some pirate captains considered it bad luck to change course after surviving a storm, believing the ocean had already approved their heading. Others did the opposite, arguing storms were warnings to correct their path. This debate was often settled by dice, rum, or sheer stubbornness. Historians still debate whether these navigational superstitions had any real merit or were just an elaborate excuse to avoid making decisions sober. Today, your ship turns gently west. Just enough to pretend it was always headed that way, and with a sigh, a whisper, and a fresh pot warming over flickering flame, you sail forward again. You don't raise alarm, no one does, because somehow, everyone sees it. 2 ships now hers, and another, sailing side by side like a pair of long-lost sisters. Their sails billow in that eerie, too silent way, as if they're catching wind you can't feel, propelled by memory or promise, or something that doesn't need permission from physics. The second ship is smaller. No name on her hull, no figurehead, no flags, just gray wood and green lines, curling up her side like vines. You want to blink and make her disappear, but she stays, drawing closer, not quickly, not threateningly, just steadily, like a chapter being written whether you like the ending or not. Gideon appears beside you, chewing a stem of mint like he needs something living in his mouth before he starts asking questions about the dead. "That one's new," he mutters, nodding at the second ship. You nod back. Neither of you blinks. Historical fact. Pirate fleets, when not feuding, sometimes traveled in mirrored pairs. 2 ships that bore similar names, symbols, or cargo designed to confuse enemies, double firepower, or split at a moment's notice. The twin ship tactic was risky but effective. Your captain grips the rail. Not tightly, just enough to feel the grain of the wood beneath his calluses, to anchor himself to something that hasn't yet turned ghostly. "They want something," he says. No one asks what. You already know. The kettle is still warm, the leaves from the captain's mystery box still steeping in the hold. You wonder if it's the tea they're after, or the calm it created, a piece too rare to leave untouched. The porcelain widow slows. She lets the unnamed ship glide ahead, and suddenly, your crew is back in motion. Quiet motion, careful motion. The way you move when something sacred is about to be touched or taken. The kettle is brought back above deck, wrapped in cloth, cradled like an offering. The captain doesn't speak. He just points to you, and Gideon, and the cook, Take it. He says go. You don't ask where. You just climb into the longboat. The widow's second ship is waiting, still. Silent, obscure tidbit. One pirate legend told of ships that weren't crewed, but served vessels that appeared only to receive something precious, carry it across some unseen line, and vanish again into fog. Sailors called them sippers, and said they drank what men were not ready to hold. Historians still debate whether these tales were metaphors for grief, trade, or simply ghost stories brewed on too much sleeplessness. You drift closer, tea in hand, eyes wide, and somewhere behind you, the porcelain widow watches waiting. The longboat rocks gently beneath you, each dip and sway like the breathing of some great, sleeping beast you're trying not to wake. The tea kettle sits between you and Gideon, covered in cloth, still warm, against your knee, as if it too is nervous about where you're going. The ship ahead slint, nameless, strange, grows larger with every oar stroke. But not because you're rowing fast, no. One's rowing. The current pulls you softly, steadily, like the sea itself is guiding you in. Gideon finally says, I've had weirder mornings, but I can count them on one hand, and most of them were opiated. Nod. It doesn't feel like a joke. More like a bookmark in a book you never agreed to read. The hull of the other ship rises above you, smooth and clean, like it was carved from river stone and forgotten in the salt. No barnacles, no wear. Just silence and shape and shadow. No faces peer over, no voices call out, but a rope ladder unfurls, gently as if responding to some unseen invitation. And it taps against your boat like a polite knock on a locked door. You go first, because of course you do. You climb slowly, each rung slightly damp, but not unpleasantly so, more like condensation on a teacup. At the top, a deck clean, empty, and then a table, small, round, set for 3. The third chair is already pulled out. You feel your breath stop. Gideon joins you, wide-eyed but oddly calm, carrying the kettle like it's a crown. He sets it on the table. No one speaks, and then she appears. The woman from the porcelain widow, bitter leaf but younger. Or older, or neither. She's not dressed in robes this time, just plain linen. And she smiles, a real smile, small, tired, but real. Historical fact, some female pirates were rumored to travel under magical disguising and de-aging to suit their advantage, switching ships, names, and stories so often they became less like people and more like ideas. Bitterleaf may have been such a figure, or simply a myth told in too many ports. She gestures to the chair. You sit, because saying no feels like a mistake with long consequences. The tea is poured, 3 cups. No one speaks, no one needs to. The first sip is different, no flavor, no heat, just feeling. You remember your mother, a song you forgot you knew. The scent of something baking far inland. Gideon lets out a single, strangled laugh. He doesn't explain it. Obscure tidbit. There was once a belief that a tea brewed by the right hands, at the right time, could serve as a bridge between this life and whatever comes next, not in a spooky way, but as a gentle passing, like fog moving from one field to another. Historians still debate if these brews were real or just poetic excuses for dying well. You don't die, but something leaves you, and something else replaces it. When you look at Bitterleaf again, her eyes are full, not with tears, with memory. You're ready now, she says, and with a nod, she vanishes. Asterisk, you sit there for a long while. Maybe an hour, maybe more. There's no ticking, no sun angle to track, no gulls overhead calling out the time like ragged watchmen, just you, Gideon, and 2 cooling cups of tea, 1 seat now empty. The ship doesn't rock, doesn't creak, the sails don't flutter. There's no wind here, and the ocean below is still, like the ship is sitting not on the water, but in some pocket of breath between waves. Gideon looks around, blinks slowly, and mutters, I've been in taverns that made more sense than this. You both rise. Because somehow, you know you're not meant to stay. Not here, not yet. You walk the deck, but there's nothing else. No wheel, no ropes, no caddens. Just wood and sky and that gently humming stillness that feels like someone else's dream, until the kettle lets out one tiny sigh of steam, and you hear it music from below deck. Low stringed, old. You glance at each other. You walk toward the sound, the stairs curve downward. But you don't remember stepping. You just descend. And below, another room, circular. Wood paneled books. On every wall, a single window, and a woman at a small harpsichord. It's Bitter Leaf again, or not. Maybe it's the same person. Maybe it's every version of her you've imagined. She doesn't speak, just nods. The music continues, and suddenly, you're back in the longboat, kettle in hand, ship behind you. Gone. Vanished like a wave that never broke. The porcelain widow is still in the distance, but smaller now, sailing away, leaving you and Gideon adrift. In silence, historical fact. Some logs speak of encounters where ships would return from strange sightings, change quieted, calmed, their crew more solemn, their conflicts forgotten. It was said they'd been served. No one ever explained by what obscure tidbit. Sailors who drank from these offered kettles often wrote of forgetting things, small things, petty grudges, the pain in their knees. Some even claimed the tea rewrote their dreams for weeks. Historians still debate whether this is collective hallucination, spiritual metaphor, or something else entirely. You look down at your hands. You still carry the kettle. The steam rises, and you are no longer afraid. Asterisk, the ocean welcomes you back like a host, remembering you left your coat behind, a little awkward, a little cold, but not unkind. You and Gideon drift for what might be hours. The porcelain widow has vanished into the haze. Not like a ship sailing away, but like something folded gently into fog and forgotten by time on purpose. The longboat rocks. Quietly, the kettle rests in your lap, warm still, impossibly so, as though the heat inside it answers to something. Older than fire, neither of you speaks for a long while. There's nothing to say that wouldn't sound like an echo. Eventually, a gull cries above you sharp, and Earthian Gideon laughs softly, like someone waking from a very convincing dream. Think we were supposed to bring something back? He asks. You hold up the kettle. He nods. Right, tea. Historical fact. It's believed that tea was sometimes used in 18th century pirate rituals, not as ceremony, but as oath. Crews would drink a brewed blend before making decisions of life, death, or mutiny. Notably, more ships held tea courts than formal trials. You float for hours more, maybe days, but the sea is kind. Fish glide beneath you. Clouds pass like unspoken thoughts. And then just like that, You see it, your ship. It's anchored in a small bay you don't remember sailing toward. Tucked against a curve of rock shaped, almost like a teacup, turned on its side. The crew's already spotted you. They wave without surprise. Without urgency, like they knew you'd be back, like they'd been waiting. You row the last few lengths yourself. The oars don't protest. Your arms remember. You climb aboard with the kettle, cradled like a lantern. No one asks questions. The cook takes it wordlessly and places it very carefully back. In its rightful spot, he does not remove the lid. He does not stir it. He simply says, "She'll be ready again when we need her." You believe him. Obscure tidbit. Some ships, particularly those with reputations for surviving strange events, were said to keep silent cargo objects never spoken of, but always maintained. Kettles, lanterns, boxes of dry leaves that no one ever admitted to restocking. Historians still debate whether this was superstition, ritual, or simply what happens when people live too long with the sea in their ears. That night, there's no celebration, no feast, no song, just tea and sleep. By midday, and the sun finally makes sound a proper appearance, gently sighing, still shy, like the ship itself has taken a layers of gauzy cloud, but warm enough to feel like a favor. The kind of small kindness that reminds you the world hasn't completely forgotten where you are. The deck smells like salt, soaked rope, and a faint trace of bergamot that must have seeped into the wood by now, because no one's brewed it today, and yet somehow it lingers. You sit on a crate, with your feet up, sipping from a cup that now bears a chip from the storeman odd comfort. Really, like a scar that proves both you and the cup made it through. Gideon is repairing a net with the single-minded focus of a man avoiding deeper thoughts, humming tunelessly under his breath and occasionally tasting the tea-soaked string, claiming it binds better when it's bitter. You don't ask. The captain has taken to sketching maps again badly, but with so much confidence that no one dares suggest he might be charting an island that doesn't exist, or naming sandbars after old lovers he's trying to forget. The crew drifts in and out of tasks like ghosts, doing chore swabbing, checking rigging, recoiling ropes into neat spirals that will be messy again by sundown, but the rhythm is back. And that's what matters. Historical fact. Many pirates kept personal journals, contrary to popular belief, not for poetic musings, but to track debts, inventory stolen from ships, and to note weather patterns. Some of these logs include recipes for tea blends, medicinal brews, and what one called nightcalm grog made from mint and crushed anise. You find yourself daydreaming, not about treasure or battles or wild storms, but about a quiet table, a clean cup, and a fresh kettle. Maybe even a chair that doesn't sway beneath you. Gideon catches your gaze and chuckles, thinking of land again. You shrug. He tosses you a pouch. Smells like jasmine. Found it in the stores. Thought it was pipe tobacco, but I'd rather brew it than smoke it. You open it, inhale, and suddenly everything slows. The scent is soft, deep, and oddly personal-like, a memory you didn't know you had until it whispered past your nose. Obscure tidbit. Certain crews believed jasmine tea could keep nightmares away if steeped before midnight and left under a hammock. One ship even assigned a sleep brew officer to maintain the ritual during long hauls. He was paid in almonds. Historians still debate whether the role was genuinely respected or simply created so no one had to bunk near the quartermaster, who snored like a cannon misfiring. That night, you brew jasmine. You pour slowly. You drink. In silence, and for the first time in what feels like 100 leagues. You sleep without dreaming of porcelain flags. Asterisk, the next morning is unsettlingly normal. No sirens, no ghost ships. No sky painted with apocalyptic colors. Just the gentle sway of the sea, the creak of ropes drying in the breeze, and the familiar sound of Gideon arguing with the cook over whether dried thyme belongs anywhere near a teapot. You step onto the deck and stretch, bones crackling like firewood after a long night, and for a moment, just a moment, you think, maybe, just maybe, the world has finally decided to give you a regular day. The horizon is flat and peaceful, the waves small and polite. The air smells less like old salt and more like fresh start. Someone has even swabbed the deck. Twice you almost don't trust it. You sit down next to Gideon, who's cradling a new tin of dried petals in his lap like it's a newborn. Marigold, he says, opening the lid, supposed to be good for the eyes. Or was it the knees? I forget. You don't care. It smells like sunshine in a jar, so you help him brew it. Slowly, carefully, as if the act of pouring, boiling, water onto something fragile might keep the ocean from getting any more ideas. Historical fact: in the early 1700s, marigold tea was used aboard ships to treat everything from swollen joints to sunburn, though its effectiveness was debated. Some believed it worked. Others just appreciated having something floral to smell that wasn't a fellow crewmate's socks. By noon, the entire ship feels caught in a rare and delicate trance. Men play quiet games of cards, the cook hums. The sails hold their breath. Even the captain seems relaxed, sitting with his boots propped on a barrel, sipping his marigold brew with the posture of someone remembering how to be human. It's disorienting. Honestly, after so many weeks of threat and tension and ghostly encounters and tea-based diplomacy, this sudden stillness feels like a trick, a calm to calm, a dream so peaceful it must be leading somewhere unpleasant, but no one says it aloud, not even Gideon. You all just drift. Obscure tidbit: some pirates believed that the calmest days at sea were a sign of a storm, buried deep below the surface, on omen that the ocean was waiting. To counter this, a few would deliberately spill a bit of tea overboard to wake the water up. Historians still debate whether this ritual did anything at all, or just made the sea slightly more caffeinated. Regardless, when a crewmate knocks over his cup by accident, everyone glances nervously over the side. Just in case. You close your eyes. The wind brushes your cheek, and the silence holds. Asterisk, you dream that night not of storms or strange ships or cracked porcelain, but of a table set on a quiet hill, somewhere inland, where the wind smells like fresh bread and moss, and someone you don't recognize is pouring tea into a chipped ceramic cup with steady, gentle hands. You wake up mid-pour, heart slow, breathing steady, and the sound of the sea oddly far away. The ship hasn't stopped, but it feels paused, suspended, caught in the amber of an unusually perfect morning. Gideon greets you with a yawn and a handful of loose leaves that he claims were hidden under his pillow. Jasmine again, he mutters. Not sure how. Thought I used it all. He says it with a shrug, but you both feel it. The oddness, the familiarity that shouldn't be. There's a knock on the captain's door, one deliberate hand when it swings open. He emerges holding a very old, very ornate box. It's carved from something dark and smooth. Possibly ebony. Possibly something less explainable. I found it, he says. No one asked what it was. He opens the lid. Inside, tea leaves dry, intact, wrapped in silks, with a tiny parchment note that reads, in tiny, practiced script, for when the world forgets how to be quiet. You all stare at it like it might bite. Then, without another word, the captain turns and takes it. To the galley, the cook is summoned. The kettle is cleaned. The ceremony begins. You brew it together, captain. Cook, sailor, quartermaster, even Gideon dash carefully, respectfully, as if handling something older than any of you, maybe older than the ship. Historical fact. Some captains, especially those with reputations for surviving impossible journeys, were said to carry a last leaves box, passed down through ships, never opened unless the crew was truly lost. Whether the tea had mystical properties or simply tasted like a better time remains. Of course, a mystery. The first cup is poured asterisk. The scent is indescribable in any proper way, something between dry orchard wind and the breath of books never read, something old and warm and deeply familiar, like stepping into a memory you forgot belonged to you. You don't say this, of course. You just cup the drink in both hands and let the steam kiss your face, rising in lazy curls like it has nowhere better to be. And neither do you. No one speaks for a long time. The entire crew, scattered across crates and barrels and leaning against rails, drinks in near silence. Even Gideon, especially Gideon, his cup trembles just a bit before touching his lips, as though his body isn't sure if it's ready to believe this is real. You sip, and the taste is nothing dramatic, just perfect. Balanced, round, calm in the way calm should be, a warmth that fills your mouth, coats your throat, and settles gently, deliberately, into the space behind your ribs that storms usually occupy. Historical fact. Certain tea blends, particularly those crafted by East Indian herbalists and stolen nuts, acquired by European sailors, were said to affect not just the body but mood, memory, and even dreams. These compass blends were worth their weight in coin and often hidden better than gold. The crew starts humming, not together, not intentionally, just low private tunes. Like lullabies forgotten mid-verse, you hear one man whisper a name, a woman, perhaps, or a place, or maybe a ship he once knew. The sea around you remains glassy, but not in a threatening way this time. Today it just seems curious. Listening, the captain holds his cup like a priest holds a relic, staring not into the liquid but into some space just beyond it, like he sees something moving inside. He sets it down slowly, then walks to the railing and stares out toward the east. Something's coming, he says. He doesn't sound afraid. He sounds certain. Obscure tidbit. In some cultures, particularly among tea traders, it was believed that a perfect cup of tea could summon old truths from beneath the waves, truths about the ship, the crew, or the ocean herself. Historians still debate whether this was metaphor or madness, but at least one captain swore his ship changed course on its own after the tea turned dark. Mid-sip. You finish your cup, and everything feels lighter, but only for a moment, because in that brief stillness, across the horizon, a shape begins to form. Thin, graceful green sails, a hull, carved like porcelain dot. The porcelain widow is back. And this time, she's not alone.